Hello, I'm Hope Logan. I am an actor on Bold and the Beautiful, and many people really love both me and our Bold and the Beautiful drama. So I've come here to share updates about my beloved Bold and the Beautiful. Everyone, please subscribe and support me. If you do, I will keep coming every day with new updates for you. The future of maybe heading toward one of the most explosive corporate wars the series has ever seen, and at the center of it all stands watching the empire she fought to protect slowly begin slipping through her fingers. For weeks, tension has been building inside the walls but now the conflict feels deeper, more personal, and far more dangerous than another family disagreement over fashion lines and executive titles. The battle has become emotional, psychological, and deeply rooted in years of betrayal, manipulation, and old wounds that never truly healed. While Steffi has certainly been harsh in the way she confronted about shelving hope for the future, there is still a business reality underneath all the anger. Eric Forrester's new couture collection has become the company's priority, and from a strategic standpoint, focusing resources there makes perfect sense. Even back in 2024, when hope for the future was first pushed aside, nearly everyone within the company agreed the decision was necessary, including himself. But Hope refused to accept it then, and history now seems to be repeating itself in ways that could destroy the family business forever. Back then, Hope reacted emotionally, spiraling into panic and resentment, before manipulating Carter into helping orchestrate the infamous coup that shook Forrester Creations to its core. Now the same storm appears to be gathering once again. Eric's latest collection has forced hope for the future onto the back burner yet another time, and even understands why that decision had to be made. But Hope's frustration has boiled over once more, and instead of accepting reality, she has begun quietly maneuvering behind the scenes, pulling her mother deeper into another power play. This time, the strategy may be slightly more legal, slightly more polished, but the emotional manipulation underneath it feels hauntingly familiar. As the pressure intensified, walked into the company and casually suggested that Steffi should hand her co-CEO position over to Brooke, as if the sacrifice being asked of her was somehow reasonable. To Steffi, it was a betrayal that cut deeper than business politics, because she knew exactly how this situation had happened. Brooke had worked her way back into Ridge's heart, seducing him emotionally while painting a fantasy of them becoming the next Eric and Stephanie Forrester, the new king and queen of the family empire. And beneath all of it, Steffi could see Hope once again pulling strings from the shadows, selfishly pushing events in the direction she wanted, regardless of the consequences to everyone else. As Ridge prepared to go home and inform Brooke that Steffi refused to surrender her position, he likely believed the conflict would end there, but the storm was only beginning. Spoilers hinted that Brooke and Hope would soon create a new path forward, and there is really only one path left for them to take. They need Eric on their side. Brooke's history with stretches back decades, built on complicated love, loyalty, nostalgia, and emotional leverage, and she knows exactly how to use that connection when necessary. It becomes easy to imagine Brooke sitting with Eric, gently reminding him of their shared history, while convincing him that making her co-CEO would somehow stabilize the company and heal the fractures within the family. With Eric's shares backing her, Ridge would have little room left to resist, and Brooke would never allow him to back away once the momentum shifted in her favor. That possibility creates a devastating image of Ridge and Eric standing together before Steffi, asking her to step aside from the very company she sacrificed so much to save. Steffi would almost certainly plead with them not to do this, lashing out at Brooke, furious that the woman who already controls Ridge's heart now wants control over the business too. But the tragedy is that Ridge and Eric may already be too emotionally entangled in Brooke's influence to see the damage they are causing until it is far too late. And then comes the possibility of the twist that could change everything forever. Ironically, Steffi herself may have foreshadowed it during her heated conversation with Ridge. When Ridge admitted that Forrester Creations would not even exist in its current form without Steffi's leadership, she reminded him exactly what she had done for the family business. She reminded him that without her intervention, and Spencer Publications would have absorbed Forrester Creations long ago. She fought to keep the company in family hands, protected its independence, and ensured the Forrester name survived. Then she calmly explained something Ridge could not deny, like while he focuses primarily on design, she is the executive who maintains relationships with influencers, buyers, vendors, and business partners across the fashion industry. Steffi demanded respect, not because she was Ridge's daughter, but because she had earned it through relentless work and strategic leadership. Her argument was grounded entirely in business reality. Yet none of it may matter now because Brooke has managed to entangle herself not only in Ridge's bed, but in his thinking as well. Even Eric, once the emotional center of the company, now appears vulnerable to Brooke's influence, leaving Steffi isolated inside the empire she once protected. That isolation could push Steffi toward a shocking new alliance. As she reflected on how close Spencer once came to owning Forrester Creations, another possibility may have begun forming in her mind, a way to ensure that neither Ridge nor Eric could ever push her aside again. Meanwhile, across town at Spencer Logan, tensions were rising as well. Informed in Bill about Brooke's attempt to secure the co-CEO seat, and almost immediately Katie realized what that could mean. If Brooke gains power at Forrester Creations, she would likely revive hope for the future eventually, removing any reason for hope to transition toward Logan. Katie was already frustrated, dealing with failed portfolios from designers who simply could not deliver what the company needed. Logan desperately requires fresh talent and strong leadership. Hope herself is not a designer, and although Steffi is not technically one either, she possesses something potentially even more valuable: influence, reputation, and connections throughout the fashion world. Her name carries enormous respect across the industry, and that power alone could transform Logan into a serious competitor almost overnight. At the same time, another crack was beginning to form inside Forrester Creations itself. Grew increasingly frustrated after pouring energy into designs that remained trapped on the shelf, while Eric's couture line dominated company attention. Even if Brooke secures the co-CEO role, hope for the future will likely remain delayed for some time because Eric's collection continues to take priority. Brooke may reassure Hope and ask for patience, promising her daughter that things will eventually change, but Steffi could move much faster. She could approach Zende with an offer unlike anything he has ever had before: the opportunity to become the lead designer at Logan. For a talented designer constantly overshadowed within the Forrester hierarchy, the idea could become impossible to resist. Zende respects Steffi deeply, and under her leadership, he might finally feel seen, valued, and creatively free. From there, Steffi could begin recruiting additional designers, leveraging her relationships to secure elite materials, partnerships, and distribution channels. Slowly but deliberately, she could transform Logan into a rising force while simultaneously weakening Forrester Creations from the outside, and that is where the situation becomes truly dangerous. Steffi may never want to destroy Forrester Creations completely because despite everything, it remains part of her family legacy. But she could absolutely decide that the company can no longer survive under Ridge and Brooke's leadership. A secret alliance with Bill Spencer suddenly begins to feel terrifyingly possible. Bill has always been ruthless when an opportunity presents itself, and if Steffi offered him a strategy to destabilize Forrester Creations while ultimately placing her in full control as sole CEO under the Spencer umbrella, he would almost certainly seize the chance. The possibility of permanently crushing Ridge, both professionally and emotionally, would be irresistible to him. Katie may hesitate initially, torn between loyalty and uncertainty, but deep down she also remembers how Brooke and Ridge pushed her aside by hiring an outside PR firm that effectively made her role irrelevant. Unlike Brooke and Ridge, Steffy never betrayed Katie in that way. Over time, Katie might even begin supporting the long-term vision, helping Logan grow powerful enough to eventually take control of Forrester Creations itself, with Steffy leading the empire while Katie reclaims authority at Logan. The emotional and corporate fallout from Steffy walking away would send shockwaves through the entire fashion world. Brooke would undoubtedly try to reassure Ridge that the company could survive without Steffy, insisting they could run everything together as the new public face of the Forrester dynasty. On the surface, it might even appear glamorous. The image of Ridge and Brooke Forrester ruling the company side by side would generate massive headlines and endless publicity. But beneath the glamorous headlines, the truth would quickly emerge. Ridge may be a brilliant designer, but Steffy has long been the engine that keeps the business operating day after day. She closes deals, maintains partnerships, oversees relationships, and protects the company's strategic interests in ways Brooke simply does not understand. Carter contributes heavily as well, but Steffy remains one of the central pillars holding the entire structure together. Brooke's experience largely revolves around being the face of the bedroom line and maintaining the company's image, not steering the corporate machinery itself. And if the public learns that Brooke manipulated Ridge into forcing Steffy out, the negative press could become catastrophic. The fashion world still remembers the outrage when Ridge and Brooke pushed Eric aside, and Bill made sure the media amplified every humiliating detail of Eric's forced retirement. Losing Steffy now could trigger an even greater backlash, one powerful enough to shatter the company's reputation permanently. In the end, this entire conflict may become the very thing that destroys the Forrester empire as fans know it. Hope's relentless pressure on Brooke, Brooke's emotional control over Ridge and Eric, and Ridge's willingness to push Steffy aside could ignite a chain reaction none of them are prepared for. There is simply no believable world where Steffy quietly accepts a lesser role and answers to Brooke without consequences. She has fought too hard, sacrificed too much, and proven her value too many times to simply stand aside while others seize the company she protected. If Steffy joins forces with Bill Spencer, the resulting corporate war could reshape every power structure within the fashion world. And perhaps, in the end, Steffy may come to believe that Forrester Creations is safer in her hands under Spencer control than it ever could be under Ridge and Brooke's emotionally driven leadership. The terrifying part is that she may not be wrong. The moment Steffy walks out of, the atmosphere inside the building would change instantly, almost like the soul of the company had quietly left with her. Employees who once moved confidently through the halls would suddenly begin whispering in corners, exchanging nervous glances as uncertainty spread through every department. Buyers who trusted Steffy's instincts would start questioning whether the company still had stable leadership, and longtime business partners would begin making cautious phone calls behind closed doors, searching for reassurance that no one could truly provide. Ridge would try to maintain control, burying himself deeper into sketches and couture presentations, convincing himself that creativity alone could keep the company alive. Brooke, meanwhile, would stand beside him with forced confidence, presenting a polished image to the press while privately realizing she had stepped into a role far more complicated than she ever imagined. Because the truth Steffy spoke during that painful confrontation would slowly become impossible to ignore. Ridge could design brilliance, Brooke could sell fantasy, but Steffy was the one who kept the machine running when cameras stopped flashing and meetings became battles fought behind conference room doors. Far away from the chaos brewing at Forrester, another energy would begin building quietly inside the offices of Logan. The company that once struggled to define its identity would suddenly feel alive again, energized by the arrival of Steffy and the storm of ambition surrounding her. Would initially approach the partnership carefully, watching Steffi with understandable caution because history had taught her that alliances inside this family rarely remained simple. But over time, Katie would begin seeing something surprisingly genuine beneath Steffi's anger. This was not simply revenge, this was survival. Steffi was fighting for the legacy she believed was being stolen from her piece by people blinded by emotion and manipulation. Slowly, Logan would transform from a struggling fashion branch into something dangerous, a serious rival powered by Steffi's connections, Katie's business instincts, and the silent backing of lurking in the shadows like a predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And Bill would be more invested in this plan than anyone realizes. For years, he has carried resentment toward Ridge and the Forresters, resentment buried beneath business rivalries, romantic history, and bruised pride that never fully healed. The idea of helping Steffi rebuild herself while simultaneously destabilizing Ridge's empire would awaken something ruthless inside him again. Late at night, while the city lights burned across Los Angeles, Bill and Steffi could begin holding secret strategy meetings, mapping out exactly how to weaken Forrester Creations without destroying its value completely. Bill would know how to pressure investors, how to create damaging media narratives, and how to quietly exploit weaknesses inside the company structure. But Steffi would possess something even more powerful: intimate knowledge of every vulnerable point within Forrester itself. She would know which buyers were frustrated, which vendors felt ignored, and which influential figures in the fashion world still trusted her more than Ridge or Brooke. Together, they would become a terrifying combination of business intelligence and emotional vengeance, capable of launching a corporate war unlike anything the fashion dynasty has ever faced. Meanwhile, back at Forrester Creations, the cracks would begin showing faster than Brooke expected. At first, she would try to keep morale high, insisting Steffi's departure was temporary and manageable. Publicly, she and Ridge would pose as the united future of the company, smiling through interviews and promising bold, new creative directions. But privately, problems would start piling up one after another. Meetings Steffi normally handled would spiral into confusion. Influencer campaigns would stall. International buyers who once answered Steffi's calls immediately would suddenly become distant and non-committal. Even Carter, usually calm under pressure, would begin feeling the weight of trying to compensate for everything Steffi used to manage effortlessly. Ridge would become increasingly frustrated as he realized that every hour spent dealing with business chaos was an hour stolen from the creative work he actually loved. And Brooke, despite all her confidence, would slowly begin recognizing that being the glamorous face of a company and actually operating its corporate engine were two very different things. The emotional damage inside the family would become just as devastating as the business collapse unfolding around them. Would begin sensing the consequences of the decision he helped create, watching the company he built with pride start fracturing under the weight of internal betrayal. There would be moments where Eric sat alone in silence, haunted by memories of Stephanie and the principles they once fought to protect together. He always believed family should come before ego, but now the very people closest to him were tearing each other apart in pursuit of control. Ridge, too stubborn to admit his mistakes, would grow increasingly defensive whenever Steffi's name came up, but deep down, even he would feel the absence of his daughter's leadership every single day. Brooke would continue insisting they made the right choice, yet even she would struggle to ignore the guilt slowly creeping into her conscience as the fallout worsened. Because no matter how much she loves Ridge, a part of her would know this entire chain of events began the moment Hope refused to accept reality and pushed her mother into another power struggle. At the center of it all stands, watching events spiral far beyond what she originally intended. At first, Hope would likely feel victorious seeing Brooke gain power and Steffi lose control, believing justice had finally tilted in her favor after years of conflict. But victories inside this family never remain clean for long. As Logan grows stronger under Steffy's influence and Forrester Creations becomes increasingly unstable, Hope may slowly realize she unleashed forces she can no longer control. The rivalry between her and Steffy would evolve into something much larger than personal resentment. It would become a war over legacy, over identity, and over who truly deserves to carry the future of the fashion empire forward. Every decision Hope made out of frustration and pride would now echo through the lives of everyone around her, creating fractures that may never fully heal again. And perhaps the most tragic part of this entire story is that Steffi never truly wanted to abandon Forrester Creations in the first place. She wanted respect. She wanted acknowledgement for the years she spent protecting the company, while others chased emotional fantasies and personal validation. She wanted Ridge to see her not merely as his daughter, but as the executive who saved the family business when it stood on the edge of collapse. But once Brooke and Hope pushed too far, once Ridge allowed emotion to outweigh logic, Steffi may finally decide that protecting the company means taking it away from the people currently running it. That realization could harden her in ways no one expects. The warmth and loyalty she once felt toward the Forrester name would begin transforming into cold determination. And the woman who once defended the family empire from outsiders may ultimately become the greatest threat it has ever faced. As this corporate war intensifies, the fashion world itself would become obsessed with the spectacle unfolding behind the scenes. Headlines would explode across magazines and entertainment outlets, painting the conflict as a brutal dynasty collapse, fueled by betrayal, romance, revenge, and ambition. Every public appearance by Ridge and Brooke would be dissected. Every strategic move by Steffi and Bill would send shockwaves through investors and fashion insiders alike. Rumors of a Spencer takeover would grow louder by the week, creating panic inside Forrester Creations while simultaneously driving excitement throughout the business world. And somewhere beneath all the chaos, one terrifying question would continue lingering over everyone involved. What happens if Steffi actually wins? Because if Steffi succeeds in taking back control, the entire power structure of the family could change forever. Ridge may find himself stripped of the authority he once took for granted. Brooke could lose the influence she fought so desperately to secure. Hope may discover that her attempts to protect her future accidentally destroyed the very world she depended on. And Bill Spencer, standing beside Steffi as the empire reshapes itself under their combined power, may finally achieve the victory he has wanted for years. The possibility of Steffi becoming sole CEO, ruling the company completely on her own terms, no longer feels impossible. In fact, with every betrayal pushing her further toward Bill's side, it begins feeling more inevitable by the day.